and welcome to the 9th episode of the MMA podcast. I am your host, Randall, folks, and today we are going to get into the UFC Fight Night Moncton recap. We're going to go over two key current events that are right now being talked about. That's obviously the ONE FC/UFC trade, the one that was involving undefeated Ben Askren moving from ONE FC to the UFC for the former flyweight champion and arguably greatest fighter of our generation, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. Also, we're going to talk about the possibility of a Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Georges St-Pierre 165 title fight. And then we are going to get into the UFC 230 fight card, and pretty excited about all that. Then at the end of our show, we will be talking to the number 8 featherweight contender, Josh Emmett, and I can't wait for that. He is going to be talking about his possible soon return to the octagon and what's in the future for him. So, yeah, look forward to that. But let's first jump straight into Moncton, where last Saturday night there was some great fights that were put on display. A couple that stand out to me is Calvin Kattar won his fight by a knockout in the first round. It was clean, too. He defeated Chris Fishgold. So shout out to Calvin Kattar. Also, on the main card, there was a huge submission by Misha Cirkunov on Patrick Cummings. It was an arm triangle choke. It was in the first round. It was halfway through the first round. That was a great fight. A lot of decisions. You can't blame the fighters for that. Obviously, it is what it is. John Vellante defeated Ed Herman by split decision. Court McGee defeated Alex Garcia by unanimous decision. Andre Sukumta defeated Jonathan Martinez by unanimous decision. Michael Johnson came off a short notice and took out Artem Lobov on a unanimous decision. That was the co-main event of that evening. You got to take it out to Michael Johnson. He came in, stepped in short notice. He fucking did the damn thing, and he went 3 rounds. And it looked like he probably could have went 5 rounds. He has one pretty good gas tank, but Artem definitely, I don't really think that he belongs in the UFC. I really just think that he's kind of going to ride Connor's coattails until they get rid of him. It's just one of those weird situations because if you look at his record, he's only won 2 fights, and I believe now he's 2-5 or something like that in the UFC. It's just ridiculous the fact that he's even still there, but hey, it is what it is. The main event did not disappoint. That was Anthony Lionheart Smith defeated Volkan Ozdemir by submission. It was a dirty rear naked choke. He finished him in round 3 with 4 minutes and 26 seconds into that round. That was one hell of a fight. It was back and forth. You could really tell that Anthony Smith's here to stay in that light heavyweight division. I mean, he puts a name out there for himself, and I really think that he can continue to do what he needs to do to progress to be one of the best. He called out John Jones after the fight. I really think that's going to be a great fight between him and Jones. I think those two going at it, I think could be some fireworks. And I really think that someone that presses forward like Anthony Lionheart Smith does might confuse Jones a little bit. And we really don't know what John Jones we're getting, you know what I mean? If we see the John Jones that came back and fought OSP, Alexander Gustafsson's going to win at UFC 232. But if we see the guy that came back and fought DC at, UFC 214, I believe, don't quote me, we're going to see a very dominant run in this light heavyweight division by John Jones. And I really think somebody like Anthony Smith is going to be a title challenger here very, very, very soon. Now, for Volkan Ozdemir, I mean, I don't really know what you're going to do with that guy. I mean, you got guys like Dominic Reyes who are shooting up this division right now. He's currently number 6. Volkan's number 2. He's obviously going to fall after that performance. Anthony Smith was 10. If he just took out 2, you got to say he's got to be around that 1-2 area. Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith might be a very fucking intriguing fight for the UFC to make. I don't know if they're going to want to get rid of one of their young guns right away, but that would necessarily happen. And let's not confuse one thing. Anthony Smith isn't a very young fighter. I believe he's in his 30s already, where Dominic Reyes is still in his 20s. But I think that might be a fight to make in the future. As for Volkan Oezdemir, or maybe you make Oezdemir versus Dominic Reyes. Make Oezdemir versus Reyes, and you just give Smith the winner of Gustafsson versus John Jones. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a matchmaker here. I'm just throwing shit out. But you got to do something with Oezdemir. He's coming off of 2 losses. Giving him somebody like a Reyes might kill him. So maybe not give him somebody like that. I know they say don't give people tune-up fights, or tune-up fights aren't a thing. I really think that maybe you need something like that. You need that confidence booster back to say, okay, I'm back in the swing of things. Maybe get that knockout. But, I mean, just in general, to get a victory, I think, after losing 2 in a row like that. But he didn't lose to, slouches or anything. He lost to a double champion, Daniel Cormier, and a very, very quick rising light heavyweight contender in Anthony Smith. But on from UFC Moncton, going to talk about some quick current events. One thing that is very intriguing, which started happening sometime last week, was there was this trade being talked about. And at first, I didn't even know that you could trade fighters. I didn't even know that was a thing. I guess apparently now it is a thing. But ONE FC apparently contacted the UFC for Demetrius Johnson. In return, ONE FC wanted to send the UFC their undefeated welterweight, Ben Askren. At the end of the day, apparently all 4 sides agreed. I mean, you would have to have all 4 sides agreed. It's a trade. Or, I mean, fuck, it's not even really a trade. I would see more of it like a gentleman's agreement, I guess. You would have to have everyone agree. So DJ would have to want to go over to ONE. Ben would have to want to go over to UFC. And both companies would have to want to take those 2 guys. I'm not entirely too sure on if they took the exact contracts they're going to work with and then renegotiate. I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. Because I guess if it's a trade, you swapped contracts. And then from there, before they fight their first fight, Ben Askren and Demetrius Johnson renegotiate those contracts for bigger, more longer terms. Well, however they figure it out. I know Eddie Alvarez just got paid by ONE FC, so I can only imagine what arguably the greatest of all time is going to get paid by ONE FC. And I'm really, really interested to see some of these matchups that Ben Askren is going to be in now that he's at the UFC and he's at that top level. They have said for a while that Ben Askren is probably one of the best welterweights in the world. And now he will have the opportunity to prove that. And he's going to prove that against top level guys. He's called out literally everybody in the UFC welterweight division outside of his very, very good friend Tyron Woodley. But he has not strayed away from title contenders like Darren Till. He's went after Colby Covington. He went after both the Diaz brothers, stating that he would fight Nick and Nate. Nick could take the odd round, Nate can take the even rounds, and he won't lose 1 round, that being Ben Askren. So Ben Askren is definitely vying for a 165 and 175 pound divisions, because then that way that would give Woodley a chance to move up to the 175. And then Askren would take the 165. He does not want to fight, that being Ben Askren, does not want to fight his good friend and training partner, Tyron Woodley. And if we're talking about training partners, I guess that takes out Paul Felder at lightweight. And that also would take out Anthony Showtime Pettis. Sorry, I had a brain fart right there. Rufus Sports, guys. So there's Pettis, there's Tyron Woodley, and then there's Felder, so he probably won't fight any of those guys. But outside of those guys, there's some very intriguing matchups. And I really feel like his style is wrestling, his wrestling pedigree, and it's just very in your face, and it's very much like Khabib, but almost just as good, if not better than Khabib. And we really have not seen anyone in the UFC at that same weight be able to do what Khabib can do. And now with Ben Askren in the UFC, the American Olympian, he will be able to do what Khabib can do and potentially give us a 165-pound matchup between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Ben Askren. But before any of that happens, it looks like the UFC is currently trying to pull off a Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Georges St. Pierre 165-pound title fight, which to me is kind of ridiculous. I really think that you got to give Tony Ferguson the next shot at Khabib. I mean, I know he said that he's going to get the next shot at the lightweight title, and I love the way that Dana words things sometimes, and he's very telling with the things that he says. Yes, Tony Ferguson will get the next shot at the 155-pound title, but he did not state that he will get the next fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib Nurmagomedov, as they are planning right now, will be taking on George St. Pierre for the 165-pound title. And that would leave Tony Ferguson again waiting for Khabib to sign for the 5th time to fight him and see where that goes. That's honestly one of the most intriguing matchups in MMA right now, if you ask me. That is Tony versus Khabib. I really want to see those two. I mean, we got to see those two. Every single time this fight falls through, the stakes just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we have the undisputed undisputed lightweight champion of the world and a very, very viable contender for that title. But apparently UFC has other plans. Now, I'm not knocking the idea of George St. Pierre going after another title, but didn't he just leave a weight division because he wasn't fit to compete? So now you're going to give him a shot at another title? I just don't understand that. I get that his legacy is huge and that his fan base will follow. But are you really going to do that and hold up another division if he does beat Khabib? I mean, maybe he won't hold it up that long. Maybe Askren comes right after and takes GSP out. Or, I mean, maybe GSP sticks around this time. We really don't know. It's MMA and weirder things have happened in the sport of MMA. But, yeah, I'm really excited. Hopefully that fight between Khabib and Tony gets done. And I would love to see GSP versus Ben Askren, honestly. I think that would be a very good fight for Ben for his first fight. It's not for a title. Then you can't really get anyone complaining that he got a title shot in his first fight in the UFC. No, he got a legend in George St. Pierre, and if he can handle that, then fuck, he deserves a title shot. But just like Sam Alvey said, it would be kind of horseshit to give him a title shot right out the gate. But like I said, take out someone like GSP, a straight legend of this sport, a 2-division champion, and there's no denying you that 165-pound title shot against a Khabib Nurmagomedov or something different. But I definitely like the matchups. Like I said, Till, Wonder Boy 2 against Askren is going to be great. But even Demetrius Johnson, I know that he's wanted to go to ONE FC for a long time because of his head coach, Matt Hume, being I believe he's like the director of fighter personnel or some shit like that. Don't quote me. But, yeah, you know that relationship there is strong. They've been together for a while, so that's good for both of them. All 4 sides were happy in that trade. Like I said, Khabib versus GSP, not really feeling that. I feel like it's got to be Tony versus Khabib. Give GSP to Ben Askren. Whoever wins those 2 fights for the 165-pound title shot. Because I really do think if Tony Ferguson beats Khabib, that he deserves a shot at the 165-pound debut fight. And the winner of GSP versus Askren would be a perfect challenger for that other part of the 165-pound title debut. But we're just going to go ahead and jump right into UFC 230. Now, this card has been fucking turned upside down, inside out, flipped around. And here we are now finally a couple days away from the event. And we have officially a title fight going on between Daniel Cormier and the Black Beast, Derek Lewis. But before we get to all that, we're going to talk about what was supposed to take place for a second. Sijara Eubanks was supposed to be taking on Valentina Shevchenko, and that was kind of thrown together, and they made that happen, and then they took it completely away from Sijara Eubanks. Sijara Eubanks is still on the card. She's going to be facing Roxanne Modafferi, but that is a completely different caliber of opponent. I'm not knocking Roxanne at all, but what Valentina brings and the exposure she brings and the exposure she would have brought Sijara that night, I really think is a travesty to what happened to Sijara now. I really think that a lot of eyes are going to be on her just because of the whole situation, but the mainstream eyes that she was looking for are not going to be on her at this point. Also on that card, though, we got Jason Knight versus Jordan Rinaldi. Jason Knight's 20-5, and this dude at the 155-pound division might be something to wreck with. And it's going to be a great fight between those two. The one fight that I'm honestly personally looking forward to on this card, Israel Adesanya versus Derek Brunson, for just the fact that these two have been building this fight for a while, and they genuinely do not like each other. They've gone back and forth on Instagram, and